Yes.
Is there an argument to be made that legislators hearing from their constituents that the government is broken, but the only way to fix it is by breaking the government by shutting it down?
I don't understand that argument.
If you're hearing from constituents that the government is broken, do you think that the solution to it being broken is to shut it down?
No. Yeah, Beth.
Some school districts have reported that they've had to lay people off because of the uncertainty they're facing with going on the budget. Do you want to respond to that at all? Some people, mental health counselors, really, they feel like their funding is up in the air, so they're
Yeah. So one of the main things that I'm fighting for in this state budget is to restore funding for school safety and mental health. And when the Democrat trifecta was there, they slashed that 92%. And right before the election, they tried to fix that and put a little bit in, but it's still way down. So the mental health and school safety funding is way down because of the last Democrat budget. One of the main things that we're trying to achieve in our budget, and if you looked at it, what we did was we put what they call boilerplate. We put rule in place: you must fund school safety and mental health with this money. So when I pointed out how the House Republican budget is bigger than any of the Democrat budgets, there is one requirement: you must fully fund school safety and mental health. I would just direct them to the guidance from the Michigan Department of Education, which clearly says that a lot of these things are in that budget. And then all parties are advocating for more funding for education. We're just funding for the most. So I would say any school district that's laying people off when everybody's talking about increased funding is probably doing it for performance reasons.
But they're not necessarily getting that increased funding right now because we haven't got the budget. So when you're saying that it's performative, you're saying it's performative that these schools are laying folks off and canceling programs like free breakfast and lunch because they don't know where that funding is going to come from. I just want to make sure they're not misquoting.
Well, I think if you look at the guidance from the State Department of Education, which explains our budget, all parties are proposing funding school lunches. You know what I mean? So all of these things are being proposed by all the parties, except maybe the school safety and mental health funding, because Democrats have tried to cut that in the past. So I would just say that if I was a school superintendent and I was watching this and I saw that all parties want to increase my funding, I wouldn't be making all of these crazy decisions, because I'd see that all parties are trying to fund me more, and I would assume they'll work it out.
So the same thing here is, I guess, hold the line?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you look at the budgets, you guys can put them back on the screen. All three budgets increase spending for schools, just the House Republicans increase it the most. And then if you look at the guidance from the Department of Education, they explain that we fund a lot of those things in our budget. It's just done in a way that is a little different than the establishment is used to. You know what I mean? So, that's why they put out the guidance saying all parties do this. What Democrats are doing is they're relying on very minor technical things in order to try to stir up a lot of controversy, but everyone is proposing funding those things.
If I can change the subject, apologies. I think I asked this the other day, but just to reaffirm, you mentioned waste, fraud, and abuse.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
I'm curious if you could give us an example of specifically, I heard fraud thrown around a lot this last week. It's a pretty big accusation to make against a state organization.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what, if anything, are you finding? What is the ratio of waste, fraud, abuse? You could break that down.
Yeah, and I really want to compliment Ann Bolin and Matt Maddock, particularly Matt Maddock, who's been having lobbyists come to him for months into his office, telling him where a lot of this waste, fraud, and abuse are. And he's finding a lot of it. And I'll just point out, I would use the Arts Council as an example of waste. I mean, you look at the Arts Council, they're funding barbershop quartets, they're funding glass blowing, puppet art. Apparently there's 2 different puppet art organizations in Detroit. They're funding both of them. When I started looking at some of these grants, I realized they're worse than the pork projects that the politicians put in there. The Detroit News writes a lot of stories about the pork projects the politicians put in the budget. these grant programs, when you let Whitmer administration officials decide what to do with this money, it's actually more scandalous than what the politicians are doing in some cases. And that really surprised me. And I think the Arts Council is one of those. But there's many grant programs all over government. So I think you look at that. I'll just use the most obvious example. When you look at the Attorney General's office, that's a very clear abuse. When you see an office dragging its political opponents into years and years of litigation with no end in sight, you look at entering lawsuits on behalf of the office when the state of Michigan is not even backing them on those lawsuits over and over and over. That is a clear example of abuse. And I think when you look at a lot of the things in the MEDC, just as an example, we've seen very clear examples of fraud. And so we've put some very important things in place under HEAT, the Hall Ethics, Accountability, and Transparency Plan. And one of those things is requiring budget disclosure. That's one of the reasons there's such a delay in this budget, is Senate Democrats like Sarah Anthony and Kevin Hertel do not want budget transparency. They do not want us to show you what is in the budget in all of this pork spending until after we vote. And I don't think that's right. That's why what the House did is we put into place months ago required disclosures. If a politician is trying to shove money into this budget, they need to explain what it is, what is the public purpose, who is the beneficiary. They must certify and we'll verify it's not going to a for-profit company. The organization exists, there's a public benefit, and they should put their name on it and they should be proud of it. And then on top of that, we required a public hearing. So every earmark that we're considering in our budget must have gotten a public hearing. And so we did that. And my hope is that's going to allow a lot of time for scrutiny so we can root out some of the fraud in these earmark programs. And I think that's what we're trying to do. And I think a proposal like what the Democrats have, particularly Anthony and Kevin Hertel, is if you don't disclose to the public what you're trying to shove into the budget until after the vote, you're going to continue to have the fraud. Yeah.
Well, now that you have these examples of waste and fraud, how long is it going to take you to adopt the budget and get it over to the Senate so that you can negotiate it since you're, 6 weeks past the July 1st deadline?
Yeah, and you're going to see it very soon.
What's
so
very soon?
We'll see. It's going to be very soon. But you're going to like it when you see it because it's finally taking on the waste, fraud, and abuse, and it's setting priorities in state government like fixing our roads, funding education, and supporting public safety. Yeah.
With ranked choice voting ban going through the House today, what do you think the likelihood is that that will even get past the Senate or even go to voting in the Senate?
Well, I think that'd be a great opportunity. I mean, we talk about all of the great House bills that are sitting in the Senate. This would be a great opportunity now that the impasse is over. And you all saw I moved one of their bills yesterday, this Senate bill that we moved and got 100 votes on. The impasse is over. Why not take up ranked choice voting in the Senate, put it up for a vote? I've seen the polling on this. People in Michigan strongly oppose ranked choice voting. It's a very confusing process, and essentially it's designed so that the people the public want to win lose. So the person that wins the election loses the election because of a very complicated formula in how the voting is done. It's a way for the person the majority of people want to win to lose. So I would hope Democrats in the Senate would move that legislation. I think now that the impasse is over, that'd be a great issue for them to take up next. Yeah.
The last major shutdown that we had only lasted a few hours. So
Yeah.
your plan is to at least get your budget done and delivered by September 30. That'll push it right up to that deadline of shutdown. How long do you think it will take to get to a consensus budget after that? Do you presume that will take longer than a couple hours if it does shut down?
Yeah. Well, since we're putting together the perfect budget, it really should only take a couple of hours, honestly. We send it to them they adopt it, we'll present it to the governor, something that Joe Tate doesn't know how to do. We'll present it to the governor, she could sign it. I mean, so in the scenario you lay out, we could send the budget, and we would only need a couple hours at that point. But I think that we'll try to give them a little more days than that to work through this. And like I said, I think once they empower their leader, Governor Whitmer, somebody that I have a proven track record of doing things and getting deals with, it'll take less than 2 weeks to get a deal. That's what I think. And
That seems optimistic, though, the kind of consternation that exists between you and Senate Democrats.
well, if they empower their leader, Governor Whitmer, I mean, this is a battle going on between two factions in the Democrat Party. The radical left, like this New York mayor candidate, Mondami, and someone like Gretchen Whitmer, who's trying to lead the Democrat Party in a direction of working with President Trump. And you're seeing that play out in this chaos on the Democrat side in these budgets. And so if the Democrats can unify and empower their leader, Governor Whitmer, we'll get a deal done in about 2 weeks, probably less, because I think when I show this to her, she will see a lot of this waste, fraud, and abuse, and will help us eliminate it. And then I think we share a common goal of getting the roads fixed. And Governor Whitmer has said that there's not a budget deal without a roads plan, and I agree with her on that. I'd like to see the Senate Democrats' roads plan. They could put that out. How are they going to fix the roads? Because if they don't have a plan, then hopefully they empower Governor Whitmer, and we'll get a deal done very fast. And, it won't be easy, but we'll do it very quickly.
The governor said no to one-on-one negotiations between just you and her, that it needs to be all of the quadrant leaders at the table.
The quadrant, I don't know. We have the triangle. The triangle, they're calling it, which is Speaker Matt Hall, which me, Winnie Brinks, and Governor Gretchen Whitmer. The triangle. I could see the triangle meeting, but again, in order to get the triangle to meet, I really think we're going to need Gretchen Whitmer to drag Winnie Brinks to that conversation, because Winnie Brinks doesn't want to negotiate with me because she knows that I'll win that negotiation. So really, if it's 2-on-1, I mean, I think if it's 2-on-1, it won't be 2-on-1 the way you think it'll be. Because there's a lot of alignment between the governor and myself, particularly on fixing the roads, which I think is really important. We must fix our roads. It's something Governor Whitmer has not done in 6 years. And, Governor Whitmer said, I'm the only legislative leader she's worked with that has the guts and the brains to put a road plan on the table. This is Winnie Brinks' opportunity to show her that there's another leader with the guts and the brains. But we're not seeing that right now. Yeah, go ahead.
We need to see an updated budget from the Senate based on newer numbers in order to negotiate. Is that still something that you stand by, or are you just hoping to kind of adopt the House budget since it's the perfect budget? As
Right,
well?
right. That's a great question. So, the Democrats get up and they don't talk about what they want to do. They just attack me and they make it very personal. And that's been going on ever since I was Speaker for 8 days, and they sued me and they sued the House. And you guys all remember they tried to make it personal and serve me in front of the cameras. That failed, and they lost their lawsuit, and a lot of it was dismissed. Now we're still fighting in courts, but they're going to lose. They made it very personal. They sued the House. That's the first time in Michigan's history that the Senate has sued the House. That's really put this on a trajectory of difficulty. I don't think they should have sued the House. I'm smarter than them, and so I look at it and say, okay, if I need the Senate to get bills done, would I sue them? No, I wouldn't do that, right? But I'm more effective. So, and by the way, how do we know I'm more effective? I won the MERS Award for most effective Republican in the largest margin they've ever seen. I also won, the Newsmaker of the Year from Gongwer last year. I won the MERS Political Figure of the Year last year. I won almost every association award you can win this year or last year for my work. The Economic Development Person of the Year twice. So when I talk about this stuff, I know what I'm talking about. And then I had the highest approval rating of any politician, including Governor Whitmer, in the recent polling Epic MRA did. And we know they're the most reputable polling firm in the state. So just to go through, I know what I'm talking about. And in order to be effective, you shouldn't be suing the people that you're trying to get to pass your bills. You know what I mean? Now, just to kind of move forward on this, I think it'd be really smart for the Senate Democrats to propose a budget based on the real numbers. When we put a budget forward, our budget is going to be based on the real numbers. We're not going to overspend by billions and billions of dollars. That's what makes this negotiation complicated, is their budget is billions of dollars more than what we have to spend. That's what I mean when I say they have no priorities. So how do you negotiate with someone with no priorities? It's very hard, right? That's why they're saying, let's just do it the same as last year and just add 4% to everything. Well, the public wants us to get value for their dollars, and they expect us to eliminate the waste, fraud, and abuse. And they want us to direct it to more important priorities like roads, education, and public safety, and that's what the House Republican budget does. So I agree with you. They'd be very smart to revise their budget and make it based on the numbers we actually have. Yeah, to the dean. Act 51? No. I think that what you see going on from Democrats, okay, so what we've done in the road negotiations is we've found a landing spot where the counties, the cities, the townships are all in alignment, Republican and Democrat. When we had a recent House hearing in Kevin Hertel's district in Macomb County, you heard Mark Hackle, the Democrat county executive, his team testified in support of the House Republican roads plan. We've seen Warren Evans in Wayne County support the House Republican roads plan. I've even heard your mayor here in Lansing, Andy Shore, say positive things about the roads plan. So when you can get the counties, the cities, and the townships, Republican and Democrat officials behind your roads plan, why would you throw in a curveball at the 11th hour to totally, they call that a poison pill, Tim. You know what they do? They come in and they say something and it blows the whole thing up. We're trying to do policy that unifies people, not policy that divides people. And what unifies people is that every road, no matter where it is, needs more funding, and that's what our plan does.
So you don't believe the formula is tilted towards outstate Michigan Republican districts and therefore disadvantaging Democrats in urban areas? You don't believe it?
Well, I've met with a lot of the local mayors and the county executives, and what they're seeing is that the House Republican roads plan doubles or triples their funding. And so no matter where you live, if you're seeing that kind of benefit, that's why they're saying let's support the House roads plan. And I understand that. So no matter what, they need more money. And so what we're trying to do, and the reason that we haven't gotten roads done under Governor Whitmer, is because they're focusing on these very divisive subjects. What I did is put a plan together that unifies everyone, Republican and Democrat, and we passed it through the House with bipartisan support. So I think rather than trying to complicate it and blow it up by pitting communities against each other, we can unify behind a plan that Democrat and Republican elected officials support all over Michigan, including in Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb counties. Yeah, Beth.
What are your thoughts on the governor traveling to Japan during these budget negotiations, and how is she going to drag things into the meeting?
Oh, when is she going to Japan?
I believe early September.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know about that. How long is she there, do you know?
We've heard a couple of weeks.
A couple weeks, okay. Well, you know, I will say that the governor has taken a few trips during the budget conversations, and you know, I found her to be very available and engaged to talk to me when she's on those trips. So, you know, and one, you know, I saw the governor's office put out a report. They're like, and by the way, if you look at their report, do you notice? It says, I've talked to her 3 times, and these two leaders have talked to her 2 times. So even if you use that measurement, I've talked to her more than each of the Democrats have. But I've actually talked to her a lot more than those 3 times. Those are just the 3 times that are scheduled meetings. But I've probably talked to her over, probably 20 times during that time. Just so you get an idea, there's a lot of conversations going on in a lot of areas we agree. And if she's in Japan, I would expect that her and I will talk a lot while she's there too. That's one thing that I say very positive about her is no matter where she is, her and I talk very frequently, and we're making a lot of progress. I can't speak to how that impacts Winnie Brinks, but yeah, that'll be very interesting to see how that impacts Winnie Brinks. Yeah.
You keep saying, now in earlier press conferences that you're going to come up with a perfect budget. But how is a budget that's not done on deadline, and the fact that it's not done, that school districts are sending out layoff notices, and there's uncertainty whether you think that there ought to be or not, how can that be described in advance as a perfect budget when it's not done?
Yeah, well, just to be clear, the House education budget has been sitting in the Senate chamber for some time, for many weeks and months, and I've kind of laid out that budget to you and why it's a good budget, and it spends more than any Democrat budget. It also empowers local school districts to have the flexibility to decide how to spend their money. And I give the example, it's like what the Democrats want to do is like, here's $100, you must spend it on transportation. And if the local district says, well, I can do the same transportation for $80, they lose the other $20. So by giving the local districts the flexibility, that will empower them to spend their money further and on more items than just the regulated and mandated items by the Democrats.
Well, but even a lot of school districts say that, well, putting it out that way is far from a perfect budget. And since half of it isn't done, it's not just about who's to blame for that, is you still don't have the budget done on time. There are consequences for that. And you keep saying perfect budget when it seems like that ship has sailed.
Yeah. Well, and I'll point out, that's one reason why today Jamie Thompson has put forward a joint resolution requiring that if the politicians don't have their budget done by a statutory deadline, that their pay will be withheld or they'll lose their pay. That's one reason Jamie Thompson's put that forward, and why we're voting on that today is because if the Democrats in the Senate, if they had a provision like that in place, so if there was a provision saying that if the politicians lose their pay if they don't get a budget done by the statutory deadline, we would have got a deal done. I would have got a deal done by July 1. The problem was without a policy like that in place, and I give Mike Duggan credit for coming up with the idea, but without a policy like that in place, the Democrats in the Senate walked away. They don't want to do a deal because there's no urgency. And Democrats would rather blame the Republicans than compromise on a budget. And they would actually rather shut the government down than compromise on a deal. And that's been clear going back to before the election, when Mallory McMorrow started saying there's going to be a government shutdown if you elect a Republican House. And that drumbeat has continued and continued and continued. They sued us. They never intended to do a budget on time. They just wanted to blame us because they're trying to win the next election. What the Democrats don't realize is they're not pushing people their way. They're pushing people in the Democrat Party, Mike Duggan's way, and they're actually hurting themselves. And so I think they'd be wise to work with me and Mayor Duggan and do a policy to stop the politicians from getting paid if they don't get a budget done on time. And this policy, if enacted, by the legislature and then put on the ballot before the voters in the next election in 26. If that type of a policy is in place, we'll get a budget done very fast. And I'm going to need that because I'm going to be here another 4 years as speaker after this. I don't want to go through any more of these budget crises where the politicians are not getting serious. I mean, you look at this, they want to spend days and days negotiating about the size of the table and what room we're in and what chairs there are. You know, it wasn't until the very end where they would even talk about education. We would have a lot more seriousness and a lot more urgency out of Democrats if they had skin in the game and their paycheck was on the line. And that's why we're moving Jamie Thompson's joint resolution today. Yeah, Beth.
Would it be accurate to say like those budgets that you put up on the screen of the different departments whose budgets increase, are those what you guys are targeting for cuts?
Some of them, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are others. I just didn't want to show you every single budget because I thought that, you know, I mean, Tim was giving me a lot of crap for an hour-and-a-half press conference. I mean, if I showed you every one, I figure we'd probably be longer than that. Yeah.
Momentary change of subject. Could you share some of your thoughts on a bill from House Democrats that would require the governor's permission to deploy the military in Michigan?
What would it do?
Require the governor's permission for military to be deployed in Michigan.
Oh, I oppose that. That bill will never move in the Michigan House. You know, one of the things that President Trump has been doing is he's been restoring law and order across this country. And you look at the headline in MLive recently where the Detroit mayor credited President Trump for helping fight violent crime and lower violent crime rates in Detroit. If President Trump finds local governments and local politicians that are refusing to enforce public safety. I mean, imagine if Winnie Brinks became mayor of one of these cities and then refused to do something like the Public Safety Trust Fund. You know, you look at a politician like Winnie Brinks who's just sitting on $100 million that could go to violence prevention right now and cleaning up gun violence across our state. You know, when you start having very radical people like that in office, I don't think we should handcuff the president from sending in the National Guard if needed to restore law and order in these very violent cities. I mean, I was in Washington, D.C. recently, and I saw firsthand, they've got a big problem with violent crime, and so I think it's a good thing President Trump is helping them clean it up, and so for that reason, we would never entertain this bill.
And a follow-up related to the budget. You said that the budget would be done soon. We'll see it very soon.
Right.
You talked about division amongst the Senate Democrats. Can you talk about the next couple of weeks, what the plan is going to be to kind of break through some of these barriers to actually get it done now?
Yeah. Well, I pointed out how many of these departments have grown by 30%, 40%, even 106%. Overall, the state budget has grown 43% since Whitmer took office. And Whitmer had the money the whole time to fix the roads, but instead it was spent on growing government departments, giving the money to the big corporations like Ford, GM, and Goshen, and poor projects for politicians to buy their votes for these bills. But fortunately, we still have the money to fix our roads without raising taxes. We've passed a House Roads Plan that shows how we do it. We've passed an education budget that's been sitting in the Senate for weeks that actually wants to spend more money on education than the Democrats. So there's a lot of really good things going on. So I think that what we could do is we could get the Senate Democrats to put forward a roads plan, and then we can negotiate roads and education. I think that would be really good. We should give our kids the assurance that their schools are going to be funded, their parents, the teachers, the superintendents. There's no reason we can't do that now because there's an education plan from the House and an education plan from the Senate. Also, the House has a roads plan. So we can start with education and roads, and then we can work through the rest of the departments once we've put our final touches on identifying all of the waste, fraud, and abuse that's rampant in this government. And by the way, once we've identified it and eliminated it, it'll be easier in the future budgets because there'll be a lot less of it. Yeah. Welcome back, Mr. Eggert.
If the Senate Democrats don't publicly put out a road plan, are you still committed to passing the rest of the House budget? And if so, what's the deadline?
Well, I think what Governor Whitmer has said is there's no budget until there's, without a roads plan. So we're not going to have a final budget without a roads plan. So I don't anticipate that there would be a budget without a roads plan. So we're going to have a budget done by September 30th and a roads plan. Schools hopefully are going to be funded earlier than that. That's what we're going to try to do. So, you know, I mean, I think that you're going to see some of our budgets before there's a roads deal. Do you know what I'm saying? So you're going to see them. But I think that, you know, the final deal will all happen at the same time because Governor Whitmer and I have both said there's not a budget without a roads plan. And the Democrats should listen to her. They really should. I mean, she's much more popular than the legislative Democrats. They'd be smart to listen to her.
Are you and Representative Bowman on the same page on the timeline of these things that some of the remaining House members?
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the things that I really like about our chair, Ann Bolin, first of all, she knows the budget better than anybody, and she knows all the numbers, and that's one reason why we're going to win the negotiations is because for those budgets that she's negotiating with Sarah Anthony, the ultimate Lansing insider, all Sarah Anthony cares about is protecting the lobbyists in Lansing. And Ann Bolin has a much superior knowledge of the budgets. And so that's one reason that we're going to win the budget negotiations. And that's why Sarah Anthony and Winnie Brinks don't want to get in the room with Ann Bolin and I, because we understand this stuff in and out much better than they do. And when you have superior knowledge of the budget, you're going to get a better deal. That's why they're trying to do this thing through staff, you know, because they think that evens the playing field, or through lower level people. But, you know, I'd like to be in the room with Winnie Brinks and Governor Whitmer. I think Governor Whitmer is going to have to drag Winnie Brinks into the room. And I think we could get a budget done if Winnie Brinks empowers Gretchen Whitmer. Now, with Ann Bolin, you know, Ann, as we know, you guys know Ann, she's a very optimistic person, and that's one thing I really like about her. And you'd have to be optimistic if you're hitting your head against the wall over and over and over with Sarah Anthony, who does not want to disclose earmarks until after the vote and is trying to protect every single lobbyist and Lansing insider up here. So I would be beating my head against the wall too, dealing with somebody like that. But because Ann Bolin is such an optimist, it works, okay? Now, as part of being an optimist, you know, she had a little bit of an optimistic view of the budget timeline, and I give her credit for that. I'm just saying that it's more likely that it's going to happen after Labor Day. So. All right, well, thank you. Yeah.
That was the disconnect, that she's just more optimistic than you are?
She's a very optimistic person, and that's why I picked somebody. You know, when you're picking these people and you meet these subcommittee chairs, I mean, you start looking at people like Mike Mueller, how passionate he is about the state police. You say, you picked the right person for this job. Matt Maddock is the vice chair of appropriations and everything he's been doing to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse. Ken Borton running the DNR. Nancy Jenkins Arno running Leo. You start looking at some of these people, even Greg Van Workum on Medicaid. We picked the right people for all of these positions, and they all have the passion, and they understand their budgets so well. Well, we did that with Ann Bolin too. You got to have a little contrast, and her contrast is she's a very optimistic person. And that's why we work so well together. All right. Well, we'll see you guys on the House floor. Enjoy.